On the west bank of the Nile at Luxor sits a giant mountain. The top of it looks like a natural pyramid. This mountain was chosen as the burial site for the kings and the queens. On one side of the mountain is the Valley of the Kings, and on the other is the Valley of the Queens. And although it might seem morbid to visit tombs, for the ancient Egyptians, the underworld was very important. And the walls in the tombs are some of the most beautiful, both hieroglyphics and also art, well preserved for us to read, decipher, understand, remember, receive. Here we find the Book of Gates, the Book of the Dead, on full display, in stories told through images. The mountain itself has the frequency of the solar divine masculine, the solar kings. It also holds the frequency of the serpent. I see it as the golden serpent circling all around it, and many snakes sunbathing, collecting the codes from the mountain and setting off all around the world to carry these codes. These kings, these pharaohs, they were not perfect. But many of them held the higher consciousness within their physical vessels. And the stories they left behind, because the tombs were constructed while the kings were still alive, it was all for us to find. It was all for us to understand. It is in full display for us to not interact as tourists do and just take pictures and admire the ingenuity and the artistry, but to look at it and see it as an invitation to interact with the mystery of life, to go deeper into understanding it through the lens of what the ancient ones left for us to find. It tells a story of light returning, of divine masculine rising, the story of remembrance, the story of how to navigate this world. The Book of Gates and the Book of the Dead talks about the world of duat. What happens when the god Ra, the sun, goes into the underworld, when it completes its 12 hours out in the daytime, out in the sun, in daylight, and goes into the night, goes into the 12 hours of darkness. And the journey begins with Ra beginning to forget his own light, traveling through the underworld, through the different trials, meeting different guides, going through different gates, witnessing the hearts being weighed against the feather of Ma'at to see how pure somebody is, confronting demons, confronting chaos, to then return to light, to be reborn. The last hours of the night are about the the scarab pushing the dung ball up and rebirthing himself, coming back up to light, reborn as the great sun, the great Ra. And it's the story of death and rebirth. It's the story that many interpret as this is what the ancient Egyptians believed happens to you when you die. You go into this darkness where you're judged and you confront chaos and all of these other things. But what if it's the complete opposite? What if this is the manual for living our lives? Because we are the solar beings. We are particles of the sun, of the great central sun, of Source, that exists beyond this plane, this physical plane, beyond Earth, as an eternal light, the light of your soul, as an eternal source of light, a sun that comes to this reality, descends into density, descends into duality, into the duat, and journeys through the world of forgetting that we are light, separation, chaos, judgment, shedding layers, and if we're lucky, rebirthing ourselves, finding our way back to the remembrance and awakening in the morning to the fact that we are light. In ancient traditions, East and West, there's a saying that this lifetime is just one night's dream for your soul. It's your soul's one night's dream. Your soul that exists beyond the construct of time that we know on Earth comes here for one night's dream. It's just a tiny fractal of its existence. And yes, it can feel incredibly dense and painful, and our mind will attach all kinds of labels and judgments to it. But this lifetime is the greatest gift. And the true gift that the Valley of the Kings and the stories that are on the walls offer us is to remember and use the invitation to rebirth ourselves, to awaken, and to remember who we are, and to lead our lives in a different manner. And there are many guides that step forward, many Egyptian gods that we will meet on this journey, that come and remind us of our true divine nature, that invite us to integrate chaos, to love that part of ourselves, to choose kindness and love, not because we're being judged or we will be punished, but because that is who we are. And although some feel the energy of the underworld of death here, The images on the walls remind us that death is a return of light. You can feel the energy of the stars here. You can feel the energy of remembrance. It doesn't feel morbid. It feels that they knew they were returning to light. And they were grateful for having had these lifetimes here. So what will you choose? Will you choose to navigate this lifetime, the world of duality, with a veil of forgetfulness drawn over your awareness? Or will you choose to awaken and live fully awake within the dream, walking this path, navigating through life, rebirthing yourself? And it might be rebirthing yourself every day, every morning. It might be little deaths and rebirths. It might be giant ones. But the invitation is to keep going, to keep purifying, to keep releasing all that is not authentic soul light. Because if it's calling you, if this is resonating, you are a master coming to remember. And chances are you're also here to guide others in their remembrance. And in your remembrance, you're coming back into radiance, joy, seeing that it was not about death, that it's all about this life, that we won the lottery to be here now. Another aspect of this great story that's written, painted on the walls, is what someone might interpret as purgatory, beings suffering, tied up. And the only time we are suffering is when we are disconnected from our souls, disconnected from Source, God. When we don't remember who we are, when we buy into the illusion fully. And again, the invitation is to rise in light as the scarab, coming into full awareness and awakeness. Carved into the bones of the West Bank Mountains, the tombs of kings whisper their ancient stories. They do not whisper of death, they sing of life remembered. It's not about death, it is about life, about your life. And if the valley calls you, it's because you are ready to walk awake. You're ready to rebirth yourself in the flesh, not waiting for the afterlife, but choosing now. The walls cry out, remember. Not to glorify death, but to exalt life. Not to escape the dream, but to awaken inside it. You came here to live awake, to live radiant, to carry others across the duat, opening gates through the simple act of living awake yourself. You're not trapped in a prison. You're walking the halls of stars born into matter. You have won the lottery by being here. Remember.